This video is sponsored by Game Toppers. Turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium portable game solution at a fraction of the cost. Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 749. Today we're going to talk about Dead Reckoning. This is a brand new game from AEG, kind of brand new, and it is a 1 to 4 player pirate themed game. It is in the card crafting system by John D. Clair, who originally did it in a game called Mystic Vale, and then another game called Edge of Darkness. I think this is the third game in sort of that genre or line or that mechanic. This one's a pirate game, 1 to 4 players, and you're going to be sort of crafting, deck building. If you've not seen that mechanic, I'll show you a little bit about it at the table. But you're driving your pirate ships around, sort of upgrading your ships, doing merchant stuff, pirate stuff, interacting with events and stuff, and there's some expansion stuff which I'm going to show you here. Now, this was on Kickstarter. I think it's only going to be a Kickstarter game. About a month or two after this video goes live, another Kickstarter should be coming where I think you can get the base game again plus some new expansions. I'll talk more about that stuff kind of in the review part of it. But let's jump down to the table and I'll show you all the stuff and then we'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so I've got everything set up here. The game takes up a relatively big footprint, but I have some other stuff set up that's kind of maybe over exaggerating that. Here you've got the main board, right? And you can see we've got kind of the harbor, the port, a couple of ships in the different player colors there, and then a couple of these revealed tiles here. And a couple of things you can see. We'll take some close-ups of these in a minute, but you can see this one's got an island. This has a little sort of translucent card that you can use to put into your deck. And then as you move along out here, you'll start to explore and you'll find new things. Sometimes you'll have an island like this. You might also have these empty spaces here that don't have any island. So it's kind of an empty space, but these you can see actually will boost the production. You can see I'm zooming in there a little bit too close. See, this one will produce 2 extra barrels on the island that is next to it on that edge. So if we zoom out here, we do some production down there. So you're going to be driving your ships around, exploring, and then also the other stuff you're going to have in front of you. Each player will have a board here representing their pirate ship, which you can upgrade. You can see the different slots here, and then you have this little tracker here for the amount of movement that you can generate on a turn. Everybody gets a little player aid here. There's also another player aid here which kind of breaks down the turn structure. You'll have some of these cubes that you will put out in certain areas to control different islands, and we'll talk about that. And these markers for showing which achievements you have achieved. And then you've also got, similar to the spot where I showed you up on the harbor, you've got a little spot here. So because if you can see here, let's just zoom up over here. So all of the harbor spaces are on this side of the table. So if you're sitting way over there, it's going to be hard to reach over here. So they gave each player one of these, and this is typically what we've done is, this is usually a spot where you're going to put these goods, which are represented as these barrels here in this spot, and then you've got to get back to your harbor, pick them up, and then deliver them to some of the different island spots or to buy certain upgrades and stuff like that. So you can just put them off to the side here to represent what is back at your home port. And then you have here a deck of cards, and these are of course sleeved in the player colors thing here, and you have a hand of 4 cards to start the game. And then these are, again, the card crafting things. So you've got here the deck hand. So he is his own little translucent thing there. You can see he started at level 1. If we were to upgrade him, we would take this out. We'll flip it around. We'll put that in there. Now he's got his level 2 abilities. And you can see what a preview of his level 3 abilities and so on. So we'll put this back to level 1. Now the other thing that you can do here is you can upgrade each of these characters here. So let's say, just randomly pick this one. I've got this one, I interacted with this, and then I can sleeve this one right in like this. And now we have another special ability. So when I play this card, in addition to his sort of base ability, then he has this new upgrade that I put in there. I'll talk about how to do that in a minute. So that's kind of how this works. So it is in effect a way of deck building, because you are upgrading your cards and then also possibly putting other upgrades that you've purchased into your cards. But you're always going to have the exact same number of cards, the exact same crew of people, because you can see you've got deckhand, crew, captain, gunner, deckhand again, a couple of duplicates, you've got the purser and so on. So everybody's going to have the same sort of crew of people, but over the course of the game, they're going to level them up differently, upgrade them differently, and so on. And just another couple of component tidbits. Here you've got the ship upgrades, which I'll talk about. So you can put these in there. This will give us more sort of storage for carrying goods and coins and so on. You know, this one will give you more sailing and gun power and stuff like that for combat. Now combat's really interesting because it's done on this thing, which is sort of like a cube tower. And if we zoom in there, you're going to drop in cubes. Let's say you were fighting the NPC. So they'll have some black cubes there. Let's maybe they get 2 or 3, and then maybe you get 3 as well. So you're tied up. So you're going to drop these in here like that to resolve combat. And depending on where things land is going to resolve the combat differently. Let's just talk about that real quick since we're here. So what you're looking for to win combat are these little crowns here. So in this case, none of us got any crowns. So let's just say this one here, I landed 2 of these right there, for example. So I have 2 crowns, 2-0 for the NPC player. So I would have technically won the combat. You're going to add up that many crowns, and you can generate crowns for some other abilities and effects. And then here, we both landed in this spot here. So we could either get a coin or a barrel of goods to put on our ship. Now the NPC player won't do that, but if you were fighting another player, you can actually generate you know, some extra resources and stuff. So there's a sort of a compensation thing. So if you don't land on a sort of battle point, a crown spot, you might get some compensation. And then you'll do some damage here. So the NPC player would have done 2 damage to us because it's in there. Now if you lose to a player, you automatically take 1 damage. And then plus any damage from here, or maybe some damage from some of the card upgrades and stuff that they had. If you ever have 5 damage on your ship, it's sunk, you got to go back to the harbor. And if it's another player that does that, you basically have to give them 5 coins. If you don't have the coins on your ship, they come out of your treasure chest, which I'll show you in a minute. That's kind of a very brief summary of the combat though. So that's how that works there. Now over here, before we start talking about some mechanics, let's just zip over here. You've got a lot of other things over here. So we've got some of these are treasure chests here, so you can actually put your player pieces in there to store in between games. You've got here, this is the Sea Dogs expansion, and this is, you will actually draft these, and you can see they will have sort of different asymmetric abilities here. So instead of your captain, you'll have a commander, and what this all do is give you another special ability at a certain level. So once you get your captain to level 4, you'll unlock this ability here. So here we've got a bosun, and they can be a petty officer in this case, and once they get to level 3, they'll unlock that ability, and so on. And you've got an old assault. So this is an expansion here. You've also got some of the expansion cards, well, I should say all of them, I've shuffled into these decks. Zip over here. So you can see we've got decks 1, 2, 3, and 4 for each of these different rows here. And so they come with 2 expansions that you can get. I forget the name of them. The one is called the Salt and Thunder, and then the Deep Legends one. And so you can shuffle some of those in there, so you can play with them in a campaign setting or just shuffle them in there for flavor. Just a little preview of the review. I would definitely recommend at least one of those 2 expansions to shuffle in there. They just add that extra little bit of flavor that just brings the game to where it needs to be. I like all the expansions. I like the Sea Dogs one. I played with it and I played without it. That one I would just say, I would actually say the Sea Dog one I would wait till you've played it several times to do. But I think all the expansions are good. Sort of a spoiler for the end of the review. I don't think any of them are really necessary, except probably, you know, one of those sort of, they call them saga expansions, to shuffle in some cards in, because it just adds a little bit more variety there, and you can just get like a little pack of cards basically. Now there is also though some stuff here, and I've got some of this kind of hidden under here. See, there's some kind of the hidden envelopes and storybooks and little other envelopes and boxes here that you can unlock, and then there's some hidden cards, a couple of big old stacks of hidden cards that come with these that you don't look at until further instructed, and so you can play these as part of the campaign as well. But you don't have to play it as a campaign. You could just kind of play it as kind of a natural living, breathing world, shuffle it in, and just have stuff happen. Or you can play basically a 6-game campaign and score campaign victory points and that kind of thing, and then play that. So it's a very short campaign, but you don't have to play the campaign to use all this extra stuff either. And there's a little score pad here and stuff like that that you can get to keep track of your campaign points and all that. So let's take a look at how the game actually works. So as you might imagine, the game is totally driven by your deck of cards here. And what you're trying to do is score obviously victory points, and you do that in a number of different ways. Now one thing to note is victory points are money, or money is victory points. So the little box with the player pieces that I showed you earlier, you're going to start with 15 money in there. And this is when you go back to port you can store money in there, and this is your victory points here. Sort of your main, it's kind of like your main victory points, although you can score victory points a lot of different ways. And it is worth knowing that I have the kind of Kickstarter upgrade stuff, which almost is not necessary, because if you look here, these are the basic barrels that come with the game. And then these are kind of the resin upgraded ones, and there's also like crates in this kind of resin to account for, 5 sort of resources. And here you just have different colored ones, but these are really nice too. Now the coins are just kind of your basic cardboard, but they're nice. If we look at the upgraded ones here, which I assume will be part of the next campaign, these are really cool because they're all scratched up and stuff and that kind of stuff. But really, there's not really much of an upgrade in terms of getting all that deluxe stuff that you need. And there is these boxes over here, which are really nice. And you can see I left the tops of the boxes there, so you can just kind of throw everything in a box, sit it on the table, people can dig out of there what they need. Now let's look at the cards and what you can kind of do with them. So one thing you can do is you're going to have your hand of 4 cards. You want to probably play at least 2 of them, because you always will draw 4 cards at the end of the turn, up to a maximum of 6. So if you for some reason only played like 1 card, then you wouldn't draw, you'd only draw 3 cards in this case, up to 6. So you have kind of a hand limit of 6, but you always draw 4. So I could, if I wanted to play all 4 of these, but I'll only draw 4, if that makes sense. So usually you want to play at least a couple of cards. And then when you play the cards, you're going to do the action here. So this one will generate for me, you can see a barrel, a resource back at harbor. So anytime you see that anchor there. So I'm going to generate some resources here and put them here. So I need to, even though I might be out at sea, I'm still going to generate them back at home, because maybe we got some orders and stuff that we're generating some of the crew back at shore. It's going to generate those. So you're going to need to sail back and pick these up. And so some of the starter cards start with that to kind of get your engine going. And you can see as you upgrade them here, like this one will generate you a good, but also provide you another cube to drop in the battles there, that for each cannon there. And your ship comes with 1 cannon there, like that. And then another thing you might play here is this card here. This will allow you to drop an influence token, one of these cubes again. And we'll just grab one of the tiles that wasn't shuffled into the main board there here. So when your ship's here, you can see there's slots here. So when I play, again, this card here, and you might have some that play 2 or 3 at a time, you'll start to drop cubes in here. And once you have enough cubes to have a majority, so right now it's kind of 2 to 2, right? So 2 neutral spots and 2 of mine. If I put a 3rd one in there, then bam, I've taken control of that island, and I can put here a permanent cube. But let's say somebody else starts to come in here, they place a cube on the first empty spot, now it's full, and maybe they start placing more cubes. Okay, so now you might say, okay, it's 2 to 2. Well, no, because you still count your permanent cube, so it's 2 to 3, and they have to put another one in here. Now it's 3 to 2. So now they can put a permanent cube in here, like so. And then this can just keep going back and forth. And then at the end of the game, if we zoom in just a little bit here, you can see whoever has control of that, counting up all the cubes, will get 5 points at the end of the game, 2nd place, 3rd place. And then whoever controls it also gets a special ability here to be able to hold an extra card. Whoever also controls it can build buildings here. And the game comes with these different tokens here. So we've got a few different ones. We've got like these walls here. So if you want to do anything with this island to try to change the cubes out, you will first have to do combat with the island itself if you have either of these 2 buildings built. So in this case, if they had built that plus the cannon, like so, you'd be fighting against 7 combat dice there. So you want to kind of, and this is a way to kind of fortify your defenses. Now the other thing to note about these cannons is if somebody sails their ship through this spot, this is going to take a pot shot, and it's going to do 1 damage to that ship as they pass through it. And the other building you can build here is this little production building. So when you take a produce action, which I'm going to show you, this is the purser here. So he's your starting one. So if you can produce on 1 spot, and then in this one you can produce on 2 different spots as you upgrade the purser there. So I could produce here. If I didn't have a building, I would just get the barrel and the 2 coins. They would go on the island itself. But if I have a production building, it will go and do the production building's worth of goods as well. And again, remember, if you're adjacent to some bonuses and stuff like that, you'll get those as well. And all that stuff is there and safe for the most part, especially if you have these buildings. Now, you can defend your island without the buildings necessarily if you raise your pirate flag. So everybody has a little token here, and you will stick that in this like so. And now you have the pirate ship. So here now, if anybody stops in the same space as you, they have to fight you. And you might do this, you might have an island that you really want to protect, so you will go and kind of raise your battle flag, your pirate flag, if you will. And then they will have to, if they want to come here and try to do anything to this island, either buy the upgrade card that might be out here, or anything like that, then your flag will be up. So you're kind of like asking for trouble. Otherwise, you can't necessarily attack another player unless you have a symbol here, this pirate flag. Now this is the captain, this is their level 1, this adds a sail, and I'll talk about the sails in a minute, but if we'd upgraded them to level 2 and you had them on your turn to play, then you can play this, and this allows you to be very aggressive and attack another player in that case. So you get kind of a couple of turns off, if you will, depending on how the players play. I mean, it could happen pretty quickly if they upgrade your captain pretty quick. Or if they get some other, let's see, upgrades here, like for your ship upgrade, that'll just give you a permanent flag and so on. At the beginning, you're not going to be attacking each other necessarily, but as the game goes on, it will happen. So that's kind of a rough overview of these spots there for controlling it. And the last kind of starting ability here is this sail. So the captain has a sail, but you also have down here 2 sails. So when you sail, it's at one point in your turn, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to set sail. And you're going to count up all the sails, either from cards you played or whatever you've got upgraded here. And again, you can upgrade these like so. You could have extra sails. You're going to say set sail, and then you're going to be able to move that many spaces. And let's talk quickly about movement. So if we look here, all of these harbor spaces are adjacent to all of these front row spaces here. So think of this as one big space, and then you can sail to any of these. And then you can move orthogonally, you can't do diagonal. Now you can only explore one hidden tile per turn, and then you can move back and forth, maybe pick up some goods and come back and that kind of stuff. So you're going to set sail and then move that many spaces. However, one thing to note is, as I'm sailing around, maybe I picked up some goods from home, I've got to store them in spots. So at the start of the game, you can store 4 in this spot, and that's coins or goods, and 3 in this spot. So if I set sail, now let's say I started the turn, I was out at sea, and I go, okay, now I need to move, I need to set sail. Well, I've only got 1 sail by default, so I can only move 1 space. But if you are at harbor or a place that you control, then you can do kind of a neat little trick. So for argument's sake, let's make this legal here. Let's say I controlled this spot like so, and I had a bunch of goods on my ship, right? And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to drop these off, because you can drop goods off at a shore that you control, whether it's the harbor or an island you control. So you drop all those off, you can just do that fine, and you can pick them all up for free. So what you can effectively do is drop them off, set sail, so then you can count the number of sails that you have, and then pick everything up and move from there. So you just have to be able to kind of do that, that little sort of maneuver. Now, if you're out at sea, you're at an island you don't control, you're in one of the empty spaces, you can't do that trick. You've got to throw stuff overboard if you want to, get extra sailing power. And there's a way to kind of keep track of this at the bottom of the board, like so. But it's not overly penalizing there in that sense, because maybe you're a couple of spaces from the harbor and you've got a lot of stuff here you want to pick up and deliver, maybe some coins to drop back off into your treasure chest. You can drop everything off of the island, set your sails, count everything up, and go, okay, now I've got enough to move. So it's pretty easy to do that. Now, as we upgrade certain cards, every player is going to get one of these, and you can see the whole sort of upgrade path here. So the Buccaneer, like I showed you at the beginning, 1 influence cube, 2, 3, and then 4 as you upgrade them. If we do the Gunner, you can generate that barrel at home, generate the barrel and do a gun, because if it's a vertical line, it's an and. Whereas here, the Deckhand gives you influence. Level 2 is influence or sail, because it's diagonal, and so on. Now the key ones here, let's look at the crew. The crew here, you can, if you're at the shore there, at the harbor, see the little anchor, you can spend 2 barrels from anywhere and then repair a damage on your ship. Whereas you get to level 3, then you can spend 2 barrels, doesn't matter where you're at, and then repair damage. And then down here on the other side, let's see, we've got the captain, right? We can upgrade them. This little wheel here, there's other cards that will interact with it. So you want to get upgrades and things like that to stack, and it'll basically do it based on the number of wheels that you have. So it's like it's just a little combo icon, doesn't really do anything by itself. And then here, the first mate starts off just generating a barrel, no big deal. But then when you get to level 2, you can build these buildings here on an island that you can control. You don't have to be there. You can just do it from anywhere, because you can see 4 barrels from anywhere. You can build the walls, the cannon, and then 2 barrels for the production area. And then you can do this twice at level 3, and then 3 times at level 4, and the cost gets cheaper as well. So if you upgrade your first mate, you're going to be building buildings better. The bosun here, you can see it starts to add in the little combo icon, and then here you can do the ship upgrades. So 3 barrels, and then 3 barrels for this, and 6 barrels for the level 2s. So if I look at here, for example, you can see the level 1s have like kind of the little gray icon there, and the level 2s there. So these are going to be a little cheaper. These are a little bit more expensive, but they're better. And then you can see this one actually comes with some storage on it. But again, if there's something on there, then you sort of deactivate that. And whoops, and you can see here they are worth victory points at the end of the game, 1 and 2 each. And that's how all of those work. And then the last thing here is the producer guy, so you can start to upgrade his production capabilities there. So that's what you're in store for. This is a very handy thing to see, like at the beginning of the game, how you want to upgrade these and so on. Now, let's talk about the upgrades. So at the end of the turn, you may or may not have bought one of these things. So if you were at a space there and you bought this upgrade, you could spend 1 barrel, again, from your ship. So you do need these barrels on your ship. And then you can buy this and you set this to the side. And you can interact with these spaces here on the board at most twice per turn. So this one, for example, I could have an encounter with it, or I could buy it. This one is kind of cool because it gives you a choice. So I can buy it for 3 barrels, and then I would just get this upgrade like I showed you, or I can have an encounter with it. So I'm going to do a fight. And then you make the decision, and then you either buy it or you flip it over and have your encounter. So you can see, oh, you're going to have a little fight. They're going to throw 3 cubes in the pirate ship battle. And if you win, this happens. If you lose, this happens. You also might get an upgrade if you win. Or even if you lose, sometimes you'll give you an upgrade. It kind of depends. And so some of the extra cool encounters and stuff like that I talked about from the expansions that I shuffle in there, that's what these are these upgrade things. And that's really cool. There'll be like little things to read stuff out of a storybook, or like you might get a message in a bottle or something like that you can have later, so that's neat. So you can do that at most twice per turn. And then at the end of the round, any cards that you've actually played, then you can take and upgrade the cards that you played with one of the things that you got. Now you can hold one of these over to the next turn. So you're like, I really want this now. I'm going to buy it. I want my captain to have it, or somebody like that. You can hold one of these over for the next turn. So you can do that. And then what you're going to do after you've decided who to upgrade, then you're going to draw your 4 cards. And one of the cards in your hand is the one that you can then level up. You can always level up 1 card. So we'll take and, like, let's say we're going to do the Buccaneer. We'll flip that around, level it up. Now that could be one that you've held, because you remember you don't have to play all your cards. So you can say, oh, I really want to level this one up because I wanted those extra influence for the next turn or something. So I'm going to hold this one. Or, you know, it might be one that you drew and go, oh no, actually I want to level this captain up or something. So that's how that works. You upgrade the cards that you played, and then you level up one of the cards that you end up having in your hand after everything is done. Now, one more thing to kind of cover here are these achievements, and I'll try to just go over these quickly here. So this is how the game is going to end. Once one player has marked, see all his achievements there at the top of the board, once one player has marked 4 of their markers there, that's going to trigger the end of the game. That will be that player's last turn. Everybody else will get 1 more turn, and then you're going to total up all your points. And you're going to get points from achievements, again, from the coins in your box, for your upgrades, from the buildings and stuff that you control on the board, and so on. And then the one thing to note, though, is after somebody's triggered the end of the game, it's harder to take possession. Let's just look at this. So if I've ended the game, there's nothing I can do about it if you come in here and try to fight me or take my cubes. I can't react to it. So to take and replace cubes, it actually will cost you 2 cubes to replace 1 if that person has already taken their last turn. So if you're the last player in a 4-player game, you're not going to get like free reign of the whole board because everybody else is out of the game by that time. The other thing is they will get extra cubes if you do a battle with any of their buildings or with their ship. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So let's talk about the achievements and then we'll go back to my talking head. So we're just going to go left to right. So this first one, depending on the player count, if you explore and reveal a certain number of tiles yourself, then you're going to put a cube on here, and once you achieve the target number based on number of players, then you will put your little marker on here and get these cubes back. Now the one thing to note is, I did mention, is you actually are limited by the number of cubes you have. And so you might have to pull cubes from islands that you can control and stuff like that. Now you can't ever pull it so it would change the state. So you might reduce your overall firepower for the number of cubes you can use in combat. So it's very interesting how that kind of thing works, where you are cube limited in terms of what you're doing. So it makes you really kind of juggle all of these different aspects of the game. So here, if you discard 12 barrels from anywhere, then bam, you just mark it. You just have to do that once. Here, once you have 30 coins in your treasure chest, you just look and announce it right away. You mark it there. If you've built 5 buildings that you have under your control. This one is if you leveled up 3 different characters to level 4. This one is if you've bought 4 upgrades. This one is if you have 6 of the permanent control cubes out there on the board. It can be across multiple islands or, just a couple. This one is if you have sunk another player's ship. And this is if you have won 4 battles, whether against NPCs or players, you get 5 points. So that's pretty much the game there. Let's go back to my talking head. Okay, so that was Dead Reckoning. Let's jump into my 3 pillars of review, which is player count, play time, and the nebulous, what is this game like? The player count I'll talk about first, because I didn't show you the deck with the solo player AI thing, which I really like. It's a lot of fun. I have played it 1, 2, 3, and 4 players. I like it best with 4. It is kind of a different game based on the player count, and I will say I really like it at all the player counts, including solo. It just, it gets crowded with 4 players, and I kind of like the crowding, and it has some different strategic things kind of going on there. And it's just, there's a lot more fighting for space there, and fighting for, some of the upgrade cards and some of the different things, and, that kind of stuff. So I really like it with 4. That would be my preferred way to play it, but I still, all the way down to 1 player, I really like it. The AI is very simple. It has a deck of cards. He basically tells you kind of 2 spaces that the ship will interact with, where the ship ends up, where some influence cubes might be dropped, that kind of stuff. And then it kind of eats up some of the upgrades off of the board. Really straightforward, and it kind of feels sort of like a 2-player game, whether you're kind of playing like a, somewhat cheating, but also kind of dumber second player. I haven't played it on the hard side because there's kind of 2 sides to those cards. But if you were to get this only for solo, I don't know if I would recommend it for that, because it's pretty cool. But I like it with players more. I don't know. I really like it though with solo too. Anyway, again though, 4 players is where it's at. 3 and 4 players, you just gotta, for me, I gotta have those extra bodies there, because it just feels more fun. Like there's just more stuff going on. You got to kind of watch, more people and kind of watch their decks and watch what they're doing. And it feels more piratey that way, because there's like a little bit more conniving and stuff and trickery almost, in a sense. Now play time, what does the box say? 2 hours? Yeah, that seems right. That's for 2 players. It'll go less than 2 hours, especially if you've played it a couple of times. And the last game I played of this the other day was a 2-player game with a buddy of mine, and we both played it, I don't know, at least 4 times each or something like that. And it was quick. It was like an hour and a half, easy. And but we played it with 4 players. It didn't go much longer than two hours, I don't think. So it's about in there. And then solo, well, you could probably get it done in an hour, I think, solo, once you get the hang of it. So, but 2 hours seems about fair ballpark. So now, what is this game like? Okay, so if you listen to my podcast a couple weeks ago, this probably, already been spoiled. Now, this is kind of like Mystic Vale, because it's got the card crafting thing. I did not really like Mystic Vale. It felt just sort of like a theory in a game. Like it was like, hey, look at this cool, tricky technique I made. And I was like, oh, this feels like a deck builder. I mean, not to be a jerk or anything, but it was just that, it's like, it's okay. Now, I haven't played Edge of Darkness, and that's kind of been sort of the consensus with the group was Mist of Vale was like, it's all right. And then Edge of Darkness kind of took it to a new level. Here, I love it. I love the card crafting. I love everything else about the game too. But to me, the card crafting just works so perfectly in this theme, in this setting, because you have a ship, you've got a crew. The crew is the same. It's always the same, sort of stratification of people. You've got the one captain, the one first mate, a couple of crew, a couple of gunners, that kind of stuff. So everybody's got their kind of job. And then over the course of the game, you can upgrade them differently. You can level them up differently. One game, you can really level the captain as fast as you can. Another game, you can maybe just leave the captain alone because you like having an extra sail in your hand once in a while to move around. So you can really play with how you approach the game. And I kind of hinted and showed you the Sea Dogs expansion where you kind of draft the special abilities. And I played with those once. And that was really cool, although I think they're kind of like a trap in a way, because I was in that game, I spent my time going, oh, this is neat, I'm gonna try to do this, and meanwhile the game was happening. And so I didn't do very well that game. It's probably the worst game that I played of this. And I was like, oh, I just got totally wrapped up in playing with the Sea Dogs. I think the Sea Dogs would be better in a campaign setting where you have those because you can kind of keep them from game to game, and then you can kind of get more opportunities to use them, because I think in just kind of a one-shot game, the Sea Dog stuff, it's going to be kind of hit or miss in terms of how useful it ends up actually being, because the person that won that game completely ignored all the Sea Dogs that they drafted, and then that was it. So to me, it feels like more of a multi-game step. But again, the card crafting is good because it kind of sits in its own space, and then you've also got your pirate ship that you're upgrading, you've got the different islands you control, and then the buildings that go alongside with that, and you've got a lot of sort of levers to pull on here, because the way that you get points is a few different ways, because I showed you all the achievements. So you might go heavy on upgrading your ship, because that's going to get you points, that's going to increase your capabilities. You might go heavy on kind of getting sort of an economic engine going with the barrels, and then going out and getting some of the upgrade cards to sleeve in, because that's going to get you kind of upgraded and make you do better on your turn. You might go after island control and that kind of stuff. And that really plays out differently when I talked about the player count difference in a 4-player game, because one thing that you can do that is I will say annoying in the best way is you can get those little cannons, and that's going to take pot shots at everybody that's moving around through your little corridor there. So in the 4-player game that we played, we had all islands right next to the harbor. There was none of those empty spaces. So we had built up like a barricade of stuff, like you got to come through our wall here to get through here, and force you to sail around these cannons and deal with this stuff and try to get out there. So that sort of dominating of that kind of landscape there is a really interesting thing. And that was partly based on how the tiles were dealt out. So it could work out very differently in a future game, which is cool, because this is the topology of the board is going to shake out differently. So that's a neat aspect to it. But it's also kind of a neat juggling act where you have sort of this economical sort of side of it, where you want to have control of some islands and some production buildings. So that's going to give you some coins and some barrels, which will help you build upgrades and also purchase some of the upgrades for your ship and so on. So you've got that aspect of it. You also got the piracy kind of, sailing around, being a jerk, fighting NPC crews and going on little quests and adventures with some of the cards and all that stuff. So you've got that whole sort of balancing act. And one of the weirdest, smartest things is the limited cubes that you have to sort of control the island. So if you go heavy on some of these islands and stuff, or trying to get some of these achievements that require a lot of cubes to do, you'll have less cubes theoretically towards the end of the game in some of the battles. So you will be a little bit weaker because you've been focusing more on kind of the at-home aspects of your mercantile life. And that's a cool balancing act there. And that's one of the things I really like about that. And it works really well with a kind of deck building idea. And so that just ties it right back to that card crafting idea, because you have this whole engine cycle kind of vibe to it, which just works really, really well. Now, I did mention during the walkthrough these decks here for the different exploration and upgrade cards. I do recommend throwing in probably I don't remember which one was the first one, because there's one of the Saga expansions like in my opinion, like the base game should be what it is plus one of those expansions, because it just adds in that extra little flavor stuff that just gives it the extra theme and piratiness to it. And the game's really good without it. I still really like it, but I said what's the perfect way to play, I would say get one of those and then play with that. And you don't have to do like the campaign stuff either. We have not tried the campaign. I don't even know how much of a desire I actually have to play the campaign. So for example, again, the last time that I played, I had missed out on the previous game day, and my buddy Billy, he got a message in a bottle through one of the cards. It's kind of a spoiler, but not really. There's a bunch of stuff like that in the game. And he got that, and so he had that. So my other buddy, Francesca, said, you know what, so you're playing Billy's stuff, here, you've got the message in the bottle. So if we run into this NPC, then we can do something with that. And then he ended up sinking my ship and taking my messages in a bottle. Okay, great. No big deal. Like, that's just the world that we are in. Like, I don't have to really keep track of a campaign and all that stuff. And there's other things, like I visited, like, this was a few games ago, I visited like an abandoned beach, and I had an encounter with something, I don't really actually remember what it was. It's like 2 months ago. And I don't want to spoil it anyway. And this is just like, okay, so you can just color up this world, and then you just, maintain these boxes which have all your decks of cards in it. So it's just always going to be in this box. So it's just like, oh, last time this happened, next time that happened. And, it's just from week to week, these things can occur. It doesn't have to be this like tight narrative thing. It can just sort of plug and play these little story beats over the course of like dozens of plays of this. You don't have to really like maintain a thing, and the rules allow for that. I think that's fantastic, because that's kind of what I want a lot of times out of a game. It's a little bit of continuity, a little bit of narrative, sort of a thread that's going to run through my games in terms of the world building side of things. But I don't have to like show up every Tuesday to do this thing and play this. And it doesn't have to be so rigid. You can be open-ended. You can kind of come and take it or leave it as you go. If you miss a game or two, you can come back and say, oh, well, what happened last time? Well, Billy found the message in the bottle, and we don't know what that was. And so, like, now I stole it from him in the tavern when he was drunk, because he's not here this week. So now I've got it. And then, and then Francesca sank my ship and took it. And then Billy's going to show up next week, and we've already texted Billy, and he said, what? How could you lose my message in the bottle? So that's cool. I really like that. It's because it has all that narrative stuff, but it's still really relaxed and casual, and still, though, very concrete and grounded into the world that this place is built. So to me, just stacking all of those layers, the cool deck building, card crafting stuff, the kind of weird kind of economic juggling of the engine of your ship versus your islands versus your upgrades and all that stuff, colored in with the narrative stuff and all that stuff stacked on top of it. And all the mechanics really work. I mean, even the combat stuff with the cube that's just such a cool thing to do. It's random in a way, but it's you've got your mitigation by the amount of cubes you end up throwing at the thing. And there's other combat abilities I didn't show you, like, the captain will allow you to drop, I think it's the captain or the gunner, allows you to drop 2 extra cubes after the other cubes have dropped, and you can get other upgrades that do all that kind of stuff, that it will interact with this thing. So those mechanics are very fleshed out, I really cannot recommend this game enough. So if you're watching this in real time, by the time I release it, I think it's only a Kickstarter release. This is going to be a Kickstarter only. It'll never come to retail. So, I mean, that is what it is. I don't know that for sure. That's just kind of what I've heard. I don't have any article I can point to. So this may end up coming to retail. I mean, the base game by itself would be a fine purchase at an online store or a friendly local game store. Again, personally, I'd throw in just a little small expansion pack of those cards, not much extra. But so if they do come out at retail, I would pick it up. Just get the base game, you'll be good. When it comes out from Kickstarter, I think they're going to add a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more of those sagas. So just be more color and flavor, more campaign options if that's your game. So I recommend it. We've had so much fun playing this. It's probably been the most fun game I've played this year so far. Other than some other games. I mean, this is right up there. Like it's summer. I'm thinking about my game of the year list. I'm like, this one's up there. Return to Dark Tower's up there. There's another one too that's up there. But this one is just right up there. This is just, I did not expect to enjoy this one either, because I didn't really like Mystic Vale. The pirate theme, I was like, okay, let's try it. And then after I played it, I was like, okay, this is really good. And we played it, like I said, I played every player count, multiple times at 2 and multiple times at solo. And I just never had a bad time. So that's Dead Reckoning. Thanks.